Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust TV this beautiful morning. It is Friday. Jumat Mubarak to all the Muslim Ummah. I'm Darshan Husseina Usman, and thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. And with this, we'll move on to the highlights at this hour. 2023 presidential election. Wike pledges logistics support for Peter Obi. 133 million Nigerians living in poverty, says federal government. Katsina PDP crisis widens as Uli-led faction goes to court. And now the details of the stories. Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike on Thursday pledged to offer logistic support for the campaigns of the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi. Wike, who described Obi as a very humble man, said he has the qualities to govern Nigeria. The Rivers governor made this known to the former Anambra State Governor in Port Harcourt, the state capital, at the venue of Nkpolu Oroworokwo flyover inauguration. Describing Obi, the governor said he is a former governor and presidential candidate and a very humble man. Obi and his running mate Datti Baba Ahmed were in Port Harcourt to commission the 9th flyover by the present administration. Away from that story, the People's Democratic Party crisis in Katsina State has taken a new dimension as the Lawang Uli-led faction has gone to the Federal High Court in Katsina to seek an injunction restraining the newly inaugurated state chairman, Lawal Magaji, from parading himself as head of the party in the state. Speaking, Barrister Mustafa Shitu Mahuta, the state legal advisor of the party, said they are in court for declaration and injunction. He said the Section 47, subsection 6 of the PDP constitution, cited by the National Working Committee to appoint the new chairman, was talking about where there was vacancy left by a member of an ESCO, saying in Majigiri case there was no vacancy left as nothing precluded him from contesting for an elective position as a state party chairman. He stressed that leaders were not supposed to be appointed by a party but elected, saying even if there was vacancy, it was the EXCO at the appropriate level that should appoint another person, not from a higher level. And finally, on the highlights, the Federal High Court in Abuja has discontinued a suit filed by the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, against the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ahmed Abubakar. Kanu had filed the suit through his special counsel, Aloy Ejimako, seeking, among other reliefs, an order of the court directing the defendants to pay him the sum of 20 billion naira, being general and exemplary damages. The suit, which was before Justice Inyang Eko, sought to challenge the manner Nnamdi Kanu was arrested in Kenya. According to Ejimako, the suit was discontinued for strategic reasons that would be inappropriate and unprofessional to disclose publicly. Justice Inyang Eko had fixed Friday, November 18, for the hearing of the matter. However, Kanu's counsel announced today that the suit has been discontinued. And that's it on the highlights at this hour. And with this, we'll move on to a trending story. Annie Macaulay Idibia, a Nigerian actress and wife of veteran music artist Innocent Uja Idibia, also known as Tubaba, has hit back at some online trolls for marking her marriage. Annie had on her Instagram page posted a picture of her husband, Tubaba, together with their second daughter, Olivia, which she captioned, "A guy and his last born. She's our lil genius." An Instagram user then commented, "Shana Tubaba tell you say Olivia na him last born?" Responding to it, Annie fired back as she wrote, "Ask the person we born you who your real dad is, fool." Another commenter also asked, "Are you sure about the word last born?" To which Annie replied, "Are you sure about who you call daddy?" Annie's marriage with Tubaba has been subjected to a lot of controversies, especially online, due to the musician fathering children outside of marriage. Tubaba has a total of 7 children from 3 women, 2 of which are with Annie. And with this very, very interesting story, we'll move on to the packages. That's more stories. The federal government has launched its 2022 Nigeria Multidimensional Poverty Index in Abuja. The National Bureau of Statistics, which launched the product on Thursday, explained that the NPI survey was carried out against several determinants of poverty such as age, gender, area, zones, as well as national count. Chairman Daybreak has the report.
The World Bank had earlier revealed that 90 million Nigerians were living in abject poverty. However, with the current instability of the naira, high rate of insecurity, severe floods and the continuous upward trend in inflationary pressures, it has become imperative to revisit the World Bank figures. United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator in Nigeria, Matthias Shimale, reveals the results of the survey carried out.
According to this year's MPI, 63% of people, 133 million Nigerians, are multidimensionally poor, i.e. being deprived in more than one dimension of the four measured. Multidimensional poverty is higher in rural areas, where 72% of people are poor compared to urban areas, where it's 42%.
The NPI report revealed that the national NPI is 0.257, indicating that poor people in Nigeria experience just over 1/4 of all possible deprivations. 65% of the poor live in the north, while 35% live in the south. Poverty levels across states vary significantly, with the incidence of multidimensional poverty ranging from a low of 27% in Ondo to a high of 91% in Sokoto. Despite several funding programs and alleviation schemes developed by the government, it seems that the country's SDG target of lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty by 2030 will take longer than expected.
Monetary poverty figures show that pre-COVID of Nigeria's over 200 million population, approximately 82.9 million, that is 40.1%, were income poor. However, multidimensionally, a higher 50% were identified as poor, while 51% experienced intense poverty in education, health, energy, water, access, and other living standard indicators. To ensure the sustainability of this new multidimensional way of addressing poverty, the MPI has been adopted as the key policy tool and measurement method, complementing income-based measurement for poverty within the medium-term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025.
This report shows that multidimensional poverty is higher in rural areas, where 72% are poor compared to 42% of people in the urban areas. So that we see that poverty as a phase of rural origin, nature, and also, as we soon see, subsequently, the face of women. Globally, people that are most vulnerable to poverty are very often women and children.
According to Shimale, poverty is a nationwide problem, but its nature is different in different parts of the country. So there is a need to tailor intervention to the deprivation profile of each state. Chamun Daybreak, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, thank you very much, Chairman, for that report. Now, when that word is quite a big word, multi-dimensionally poor, like 84% of Nigerians are multi-dimensionally poor. Like, that's quite a number. You know, I'm not alone in the studio, by the way. I have Zainab, joining me. She had an issue, but, I'm glad, everything is fixed right now.
Thank you so much, Dash. And, some people also said that it seems like they got that figure wrong, because I think we have more people in poverty than those
So
numbers.
how many people would you say, are in Nigeria? A lot of people would actually say that, just a few percentage, like 5% are the elites, and then there's no average. Then
crazy.
You have really poor people.
That's very
The
crazy,
word
I would say.
multi-dimension, like in different facets. Just think about it. Wow. All right, well, you're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and we'll move on to more of these stories. The Chief of Army Staff has charged all operational theaters to review their strategies in order to defeat the country's adversaries. The review of operational activities, according to the Army Chief, will help secure lives and properties in the Northeast in particular and Nigeria in general. Beatrice Kuruti has more.
Despite the relative peace enjoyed in Borno State, the Nigerian army is not resting on its oars in guarding against security threats across the northeast region. And to continue delivering on its constitutional mandate, the army believes a change of operational strategies is required to sustain their onslaught on terrorists.
To have committed soldiers, the need for us to retrain and continue training, because it can never be enough. The need for us to stay focused onto this, our mandate, which he has given to the theater, and which is to restore peace and tranquility in the Northeast. And that's exactly what he has conveyed. It's just reminding us of the need for us to remain committed and focused in the missions ahead.
To deem it wise to call the various commanders in all spheres of command, high hierarchy, middle cadre, and the low-ranking officers, to come together to tweak our methodology for fighting and see how we can do fighting better, and to support Nigerians and defend Nigerians, which is our ultimate goal, to make Nigeria a safer and better country to live in.
How will he enhance the warrior ethos in the Nigerian army to enhance combat effectiveness? And so this is why some of us who had cut our teeth in the past fighting in this very army and recorded great successes were called to come and share our experiences with the officers and soldiers now.
It is believed that the new strategies, which comprise techniques and military procedures, will further strengthen the security architecture. The meeting is connected with President Buhari's directive for all security agencies to deal with Nigeria's adversaries decisively.
Electricity consumers in Katsina are raising questions on malfunction of some electrical installations. On Wednesday, some residents of Shagari low-cost quarters in the metropolis were rushed to the hospital after an electric power shocking incident. Now, among the victims is a 7-year-old child as well as some women. Abdullahi Yamadi has the details of this report.
According to an eyewitness account, the incident started from an electricity transformer which was installed recently in the area. The residents said poor installation and nonchalant attitude of personnel of electricity distribution firm for not doing the right thing before, during and after the installation of the transformer may be responsible. This 7-year-old boy was just standing by the window in this house and got electric shock when he touched the netting to the window. We took him to the hospital immediately, and I doubt if this boy will survive it. Our major concern is our safety. Many people in this area are complaining, having this problem in their houses. We want KEDCO to make thorough investigation and rectify the problem once and for all. Though the fault has been rectified, but many residents are wondering why there is no any official explanation from the electricity firm hours after the incident.
Nefa ne aka mido mu ta dinga tafowa direct ba control. Kana iya mana a inda kake tsaye ka dinga din shokin na daukar ka sosai. A ko ina? A ko ina. Saboda ni TV ne na je tabawa na ji shokin kuma ba waya da ta fito ko wani abu. Sosai ya ibe ni dan haka sa tashi ne, amma da yanzu da sauki.
The KEDCO regional manager in charge of Katsina, Nasir Dambo, said the incident was a failure of lightning arrestor, noting, however, that it neither harms human being nor electronic devices.
We had a problem with lightning arrestor, and a good Samaritan from that area, he just called that they are experiencing high voltage. Immediately they called and we sent our technical staff, and they quickly identify the problem, and within less than 5 minutes they are able to rectify the issue. But on the issue that many people are affected, I'm not aware. I'm just hearing it from you. And I expect if anything like that happen, I'm very sure the community will come.
The regional manager said that customers are responsible for provision of protection devices in their houses in the event of high voltage or any unforeseen situation. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Well, that's quite a sad one, being that, we should do whatever it takes, to protect ourselves no matter what. But when it comes to anything that has to do with electricity, it's not something one wants to experience at all. All right, so let's move on. National Chairman of the Labour Party, Julius Aburi, says Nigeria's political elites are fueling regional politics ahead of the 2023 elections with a view to polarizing the electorate along primordial sentiment and fault lines. Aburi said this at the party's national secretariat during an audience with supporters from the northern part of the country. Trustee Fiz Shafi'u Suleiman reports.
National leaders of the Labour Party as they demonstrate some dance steps in response to the melody of trumpeters from the northern part of the country. The sound of the trumpets is coming at the time stakeholders in the nation's polity continue to raise concerns over the rising hate speeches and incitements by politicians to woo the electorate upon using regional or religious biases.
Today, the number of out-of-school children is more in the north. The northern region, as of today, has more poor people than in the south. In 2015, the number of out-of-school children in the north was 7 million children. As of today that you have a northerner as president, the number of out-of-school children is above 20 million out-of-school children. In 2014, President Goodluck Jonathan built Amajiri schools and removed a lot of Amajiris from the streets, provided them with education, provided them with food, catered for those children. But today, the Amajiri schools are no more. They have been abolished, even by somebody who is from the northern part of the country.
Aburi says Nigerians should resist such dangerous narratives as poverty, economic hardship, amongst other challenges, do not segregate based on religion, region, and ethnicity.
The person from the north doesn't buy garri cheaper than the person from the south. Inflation does not know who is a northerner nor who is a southerner. But what is key to us is that the political oligarchy in Nigeria, whether from the north, south, and so on, have been using religious, tribal, and ethnic sentiments to continue to divide the poor people and continue to exploit them.
Regional, ethnic, and religious biases are deployed during electioneering to attract support and sympathy of the voting population, relegating competence, capacity, reputation, and integrity of the candidates to the background. Shafi'u Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Well, there you have it on the news highlights today on Daybreak. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, the program continues. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that you look at this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV and we're live in the Federal Capital Territory. It's now time for us to review the papers, and right about now we'll start by taking headlines from the front page of the national dailies that we actually have, and we'll start with Daily Trust newspaper. The lead story here says NBS report: insecurity, energy crisis plunge 133 million Nigerians into poverty. And we have writers that says 86 million in North, 47 million in South. Results will influence allocation of resources, says Buhari. Children worst hit. Skill acquisition, not cash distribution, will end poverty, says experts. And you can find details of that on page 4, and you'd actually see an infograph of a breakdown of the multidimensional poverty index in Nigeria. Here it says 63% Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. That's about 133 million. 65%, that's 86 million of the poor live in the north. Now let's move on to more stories. At the top of the page there on 2023, governors intolerant ordering disruption of campaign, says IGP. We have a Senate committee uncovers 10.8 billion naira insertion in Defense Ministry's budget. Details of that can be found on page 4 as well. Petad recovers 26.5 million pounds colonial pension fund from the UK. All right, stashed cash. More Nigerians or more governors under our radar, says EFCC. Parties fielded only 10.1% women candidates, says report. Bandits killed chief imam, 2 farmers in Sokoto, and these are some of the stories you can find on Daily Trust this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at some more stories on the Nation newspaper this morning. The lead story there says security chiefs Wike attacks Atiku for criticizing Buhari. And some of the riders there, you'd see Rivers governor vows to remain in PDP, fight vultures, scavengers. Obi outlines plans. And then you see the story about First Lady, governor's wives rally for Tinubu Shatima in Ilorin. That story is on page 4 on the Nation newspaper. IG blames violence, tension on governors. Tinubu to make Southeast Industrial Hub. Don't toy with Uzodima. That story is also on page 4 on the Nation newspaper. And on page 5, you see the story about Zenith Tech Fair 2.0 attracts global brand leaders. Why we dropped 20 billion naira case against government by Kanu's lawyer. Then you see another story that talks about Nigeria faces debt servicing challenges. DMO warns. And on page 5 on the Nation, Abiodun takes 472.25 billion budget 2023 to Ogun Assembly. These are the major stories on the Nation.
All right, let's take a look at this day newspaper. From the top of the page there, we have Jim Ovia, IT practitioners, the headline Zenith Tech Fair. We have more troubles for PNID as firm owned by Linjima drags ex-partner to court over $40 million loss. Southeast businessmen support Tinubu's presidential bid with 1 billion naira. We have UTM Offshore, JGC, Technip Energies sign agreement on Nigeria's FLNG. The lead story here says Bawa, Naira redesign significant step to economic recovery. And we have writers on that story. Says more governors being monitored for stashed cash. ICPC recovers 117 billion naira in 8 months. Arraigns former customary court of appeal judge. CBN directs banks to work on Saturdays to beat deadline for return of old bank notes. And there's a pictorial there of the signing of the FLNG agreement for Nigeria. And these are some of the stories on this day newspaper.
And on the Guardian newspaper this morning, 133 million Nigerians remain poor despite sharing $700 million a Baton route. And then the riders there, you'd see 25.3 million Nigerians face acute food nutrition insecurity in 2023. UNICEF, over 14 million children in Nigeria face acute malnutrition. And PDP carpets APC over MBS report says majority of Nigerians excluded from intervention schemes. You'll find other stories as well. On the road to Qatar 2022 World Cup without Nigeria. Now that's quite tragic, I must say, but you can read the big story on pages 4 and 5 on the Guardian newspaper. And on page 3, Naira redesign, more governors under scrutiny, says EFCC MACBAN anxious over fund stuck in forests. And then relief as Lagos Airport restores runway lights 14 years after. That's quite a very interesting story. And on page 7, UTM offshore, JGC, others sign agreements for Nigeria's first FLNG facility. And you see the story also about NPA denies collecting jetty charges in dollar. And on page 6, that's about it on the Guardian newspaper. US backs INEC on beavers, threatens visa ban on election riggers. These are major stories on the Guardian.
All right, with that, we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, we'll continue with the headlines.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that.
All right, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. It's still Daybreak on Trust TV, and we're still reeling out the headlines of the national dailies. We'll take the Punch newspaper. The lead story here says hoodlums attack. Federal government deploys soldiers, DSS in INEC offices nationwide. And we have riders that say security team to be drawn from Army, Police, DSS, NSCDC, Fire Service. Governors using thugs, state security outfits to cause violence. IG cries out. U.S. threatens to sanction candidates, politicians sponsoring violent campaigns. And we have Nigeria's poverty exceeds World Bank projection. 5 states lead. We also have more stories on business. Naira depreciation, inflation erode workers 25 trillion naira salaries. Now, there's a lead story, there's a pictorial there of obese supporters protesting an alleged underage registration and vote buying plot. We also have 11 billion naira addition to defense budget uncovered. Minister queried. Ataga says I was forced to sign prepared police statement, says Chidinma. And we also have looted funds. EFCC puts more governors under watch. And these are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper. And we have our guest analyst in the studio with us already. He's Nuruddin Abdullah, editor 21st Century Chronicles, joining us for the newspaper review. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, thank you.
Thank you for coming on the program.
All right, so the lead story on Daily Trust talks about the NBS reports that says 133 million Nigerians, are, poor, extremely poor right now, and they attributed it to insecurity and also the energy crisis as well. Let's have your thoughts on this.
So I think that is the obvious. More importantly, the research was conducted rather by a government agency, Bureau for Statistics. So, in those days when these figures were released, people keep wondering, they look at it as just mere English. These people with their data. But now it's a reality. You don't need to be an economist, you understand, to understand that there is inflation. Looking at the level of insecurity, there are certain things that we took for granted then, but now they're beyond our reach. In those days, when you talk about the economy, say inflation. So what is inflation? But now, just how much is the measure of Gadi? You understand? So all these things have so there is nothing surprising. There is mass displacement as a result of not only the insurgency, but the banditry which is happening in the hinterlands. Talking about the state of the Northwest and part of the North Central. People cannot go to farms. And this is going for almost 2-3 years. You understand? You go to farm, you farm, but you cannot even harvest. So, all this add up. The smaller economies that people rely on, because majority of Nigerians don't rely on government. How many percent of Nigerians are working in the, let's say, formal sector? They rely on agriculture and other smaller businesses, but the environment is becoming more toxic by the day because of this insecurity, as well as the energy crisis. Look at the beginning of the liter of diesel, how much was it? Less than 300 naira. But now, it's almost 800 plus. So how do you cope with the inflation, insecurity, and the cost of energy? At the time, some banks have to even slash their working hours. Offices where air conditioners are being used now, they have deployed fans. All to cost and unfortunately, we thought that particularly when the the diesel prices went up. We thought that maybe it is a temporary thing, but apparently it is not. Look at even the PMS angle. Then, above all, electricity. It is not improving. We celebrated when it did at the peak of the rainy season, but it seems that now we are going back to the status quo. So these are the, we recorded how many collapses this year alone. And nobody is saying anything. The explanation we get from the authorities is that there are maintenance. In those days, the collapse happened, you know, maybe from the hydro, whatever. But now, almost zero grid. And they will say maintenance. How can you have more than 15 or 20 gas stations that's power in the country? How can they go on maintenance at the same time? So more people are incurring losses, more people are getting out of business, more people are becoming poor. It's a multi-dimensional poor. They cannot afford housing. Those that send their children to private schools so that they get a semblance of better education are now taking them back to public schools where almost nothing is going on. Those who afford to send their children to maybe private universities because of the ASU strike now cannot pay the exorbitant fee. They have to bring them back to public schools. And ASU and federal government are not yet tired with the pro rata payment. Nobody knows what happens tomorrow. You understand. So, you know, all these issues, if you look at it.
You know, according to that report, one other disturbing factor that I got noticed about is that children are worst hit. Isn't that a disaster for the country?
Yes. Look at the parents. It's a simple thing, particularly, and if you look at it, you know, it's urban slums, poverty, you understand? In those days, at the villages, you can farm. The president said, like, people should go to farm. Where? You understand? The children are worst hit because their parents are out of work, out of smaller businesses. She's frying akara in one end, but bandits are now in control. She has to move. Her husband may be a pensioner who has spent more than 12 months without getting a penny. Or he works in one private firm he has been rusticated. So what happens? The burden lies on the woman. And the security situation cannot warrant her earning that livelihood that she feeds her family with. So all this out of what happens to the children? Out of school. Most of our health expenses are out of pocket because there is no national insurance coverage. So, you know, all these things add up. And they are the worst hit. Most of them are, just look at it. The minister said it not long ago. The number of out of school children from 2015 to date has moved from about 7 million to over 10 million.
It actually further says that the highest state with multidimensional poverty is Sokoto, and the lowest is Ondo State.
Yeah. And the trend hasn't changed much. We used to have Sokoto.
91%.
Yeah, Sokoto. So it means that Sokoto is still worse than even the Boko Haram ravaged state of Ethiopia in particular. Because it used to be that axis. Long ago, it used to be Jigawa, Sokoto, Yobe. So what does it mean? We don't care about this. Nobody cares.
Okay, let's move on to more stories now. What's your thoughts on the Senate committee uncovering 10.8 billion naira insertion in Defense Ministry's budget?
I have a problem with insertion. The Senate, okay, the minister could explain it, right? Maybe that's what they call insertion.
Where did it come from?
It's between the Ministry of Finance, Budget Office. This is usual among the MDS. I remember one incident. It's a MDA in the health sector So when the budget was passed, he realized that about 20, how much? About 2 billion, because it was started. So he called his GM of finance. He said, what happened? Is this the budget? He said, Oga, don't bother. The owners of the money will come for it. And that's what happened. So it happens. You do your own, you send it to the budget office. They do the budget, the minuses and whatever, and they take care of the stakeholders' interest, people in the Villa, National Assembly, and what is it?
Okay, let's take a look at city and crime before we move on to more stories. That's page 20 and 21 of Daily Trust newspaper. We have a story of, Umita, the lady that was killed by her Chinese boyfriend in Kano, saying, I saw Chinese with blood-stained knife, neighbor tells court. And, okay, you want to share your thoughts on that first?
Yeah, that was very tragic, but like I say, when the incident happened, we have to review our, we have to look into our moral fabrics, you understand? Because this thing happened in the north, in Kano. So there are, the relationship between the slain lady and that expert, right, calls to question so many things. It questions our values. There is no any law say that she's not a Chinese, should not marry a Nigerian, a Hausa, a Yoruba, whatever. But there are certain things that parents in particular must guard against. You understand? So many things happened that culminated into the murder of that by the Chinese. The unfettered access the man has into the family, These people are Hausa people, for heaven's sake, from Sokoto. You understand? So many things happen. Whatever the family did to him, it doesn't justify the mother. But in Hausa, there's what we call, I've even forgotten that. So many things build up. So that they collect his money, that she will marry him. He bought this for her. Because the audacity he had in executing his crime, he knew her room inside the house. In a typical house setting. Not being a husband doesn't just barge into his in-laws. We have some cultural, social values to, but not to talk of, not being a fiancé, a boyfriend. So, all these things, we have to actually look inward and correct certain things, If not, these things will keep on happening. And again, you can do that maybe to a typical Nigerian. Allah is a revolution. In Hausa, forget about her. But he's a Chinese man. He looks at it as an investment.
Interesting. But at the end of the day, it is required that she gets justice. Where do you see this case heading then?
All boils down to the quality of prosecution. Quality of prosecution. He's rich. That's the only link between him and that lady, because he's of his money. I'm sorry to say it, you understand? Therefore, I know he will have access to competent lawyers. So the state, which is Kano, has to have a very strong prosecution team to ensure that justice is served in this case. But when you bring a low-level prosecutors and whatever, they will use technicality to knock the thing, because he's studying. It's a murder case, you understand? It's capital punishment. So he will utilize his government, his people, directly or indirectly, will utilize all their available means to give him strong representation. So the state government need to up their ante and ensure that the lady gets justice, while other Nigerians, particularly in that part of the country, we should learn from this tragic incident.
Absolutely. Okay. Can you share your thoughts on the Inspector General of Police crying out that governors are using thugs and state security outfits to cause violence?
That's the obvious.
Politics.
Even though they will deny it, maybe there will be a strong rebuke from maybe the governors. That's the obvious. They are using thugs, they are using security personnel to do that. We saw what happened in Kaduna when I think a PDP held its rally at the Ranch B Stadium. We saw what happened in Borno when the PDP candidate's motorcade was pelted and some people injured. And we saw what happened in Jos. The vicinity, even where the president was there. So, excuse me, and not only that, the NSA last week was saying that in the last 10 months, the security agencies recorded almost 52 politically inclined violence. Only the police, only the governors can do it because they have the money, they are in charge, they control the security apparatus in their state because of their power and their money, and what if it. That's cause what if they have state police. They are using thugs, they are using vigilante, they are using all manner, they are even controlling the federal security agencies in their states. So, and I like the boldness of the IG in calling them out. Yeah, telling them, yeah, you are responsible for this, and you can't be in power forever. That's what they forget. You can inflict all manner of injury, hardship on your opponent today. Like everybody was trying to tell Obi, the Labour Party was in Kaduna. Everybody reminded him that he was in Anambra some years back while Obi was governor, and he accused the Labour candidate of orchestrating his arrest and detention by the security service. But Obi now is out of power. He's a presidential candidate. Even Erufai, in the next couple of months, he'll be out of power. I remember he was once arrested here. He returned from the UK or Dubai. Then he was picked by the DSS during a protest around Usitu or thereabout. They should know that power is transient. You can't be a governor forever. Maximum 8 years. So think of life outside power. So these are some of those things. I like what the IG, they need to be told. Even though I know they have immunity, they have money, they can rush to the villa, intimidate the president, and nothing can, that's the end of it. But nobody knows who will be a victim. It happened in Kaduna, we did like this. It is PDP, it is Atiku. It happened in Maiduguri, the police in Maiduguri even deny it. Then suddenly it happened in Jos with the president in situ. That's security breach. Nobody knows where it will happen next. Maybe with no connection to that violence in Jos. Elomeka, it slumped. People with BP or whatever, there are some of these things that. So I think maybe the stakeholders, like the Salami Committee, they have warned some of them, the governors, that, they should actually rein their talks from unleashing mayhem 100 days to the election.
All right, well, the lead story on this day newspaper talks about the Naira redesign, and Bawa saying, that's EFCC saying that they've gotten significant steps to economic recovery, and then the ICPC saying that they've recovered 117 billion Naira in 8 months, due to the whole talk about the redesign. and saying that they're monitoring more governors for stashed cash.
So I don't know. I don't like the way the EFCC chairman is doing. He should act more than talk. Security agencies don't talk. But talk. And all his predecessors had that issue. Most recent one, Magu. The pioneer one, I know everybody, he went to the National Parliament saying that they have an advisory on 30 governors. He was mentioning them one after the other. Some is saying that it's direct stealing. That's uncalled for. Do your work. You can arrest a governor, but you can get the money. And most of these monies, I don't think they are kept in the government houses. No, they are in private properties. Get your search warrant and storm the place and get the money. Let it be evidence-based. I don't want this talk. The other time you say 4 governors, 3 governors. One of the governors, I remember, is it the governor of Zamfara? He even dared the EFCC chief. He should go to the property and get the money. Stop the talk. So you understand, it should be evidence-based. When you storm a house in Abuja, you uncover this cash, then yeah. With the Abuja municipality authorities, you know who are the owners of the property. Is it a state government property? Is it a federal property? Or is it a personal property? When you arrest an individual, but I hope that maybe they won't do much cover-up. The EFCC, the ICPC recovered some funds not long ago. You remember? The Baru, the thing. And what if they say it belongs to a former army chief. Then the former army chief has been threatening to sue the online newspaper that did the story. So, all this. Let's talk, Mr. Bauer. More action. Storm a house. Let's see you with all this cash. They will celebrate you. But saying this, he has become a canary, talking. That is the undoing of his predecessors. He should know. Everybody spoke too much. The people he accused at that time now, the people he is following now. Was Farida Waziri, same thing. Lamurde, same thing. Most recently, Magu. The hunter became the hunted. So let's talk. More action. Storm house. Bring all the guys. They will know you're talking. But this talk.
Well, talking about talking, I'm going to be having a lot of talking a bit later. Mr. Nuruddin Abdullah will still be with us for the discussion at the top of the hour. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
That's great. That's good to see you.
All right, good morning and welcome to Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital. I am Zainab Bala. It's 8 a.m. here in the nation's capital.
Thank you for staying with us. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman. Let's move on to the headlines at this hour.
2023 presidential election, Wike pledges logistics support for Peter Obi.
133 million Nigerians living in poverty, says federal government.
Katsina PDP crisis widens as Uli-led faction goes to court.
And now the details of the stories. Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike on Thursday pledged to offer logistic support for the campaigns of the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi. Wike, who described Obi as a very humble man, said he has the qualities to govern Nigeria. The Rivers governor made this known to the former Anambra State governor in Port Harcourt, the state capital, at the venue of the Nkpolu Oroworokwo flyover inauguration. Describing Obi, the governor said he's a former governor and a presidential candidate and a very humble man. Obi and his running mate, Datti Baba Ahmed, were in Port Harcourt to commission the 9th flyover by the present administration.
Moving on, the People's Democratic Party PDP crisis in Katsina State has taken a new dimension as the Lawal Yuli-led faction has gone to the Federal High Court in Katsina to seek an injunction restraining the newly inaugurated state chairman, Lawal Magaji from parading himself as head of the party in the state. Speaking, Barrister Mustafa Shitu Mahuta said the state legal advisor of the party said they are in court for a declaration and injunction. He said the Section 47, subsection 6 of the PDP constitution cited by the National Working Committee to appoint the new chairman was talking about where there was vacancy left by a member of an exco, saying in the Majigiri case there was no vacancy left as nothing precluded him from contesting for an elective position as a state party chairman. He stressed that leaders were not supposed to be appointed by a party but elected, saying even if there was vacancy, it was the exco at the appropriate level that should appoint another person, not from a higher level.
And finally, the Federal High Court in Abuja has discontinued a suit filed by the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, against the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ahmed Abubakar. Kanu had filed the suit through his special counsel, Aloy Ejimako, seeking, among other reliefs, an order of the court directing the defendants to pay him the sum of 20 billion naira, being general and exemplary damages. The suit, which was before Justice Inyang Ekwo, sought to challenge the manner Nnamdi Kanu was arrested in Kenya. According to Ejimako, the suit was discontinued for strategic reasons that would be inappropriate and unprofessional to disclose publicly. Justice Inyang Ekwo had fixed Friday, November 18 for the hearing of the matter. However, Kanu's counsel announced today that the suit has been discontinued.
Well, there you have it on the news highlights. Now let's take more news. The chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdurrashid Bawa, says the number of governors who are under watch for money laundering have increased from the initial 3 being tracked. The FCC chairman revealed this on Thursday while briefing newsmen at State House Abuja after meeting President Muhammadu Buhari. The anti-corruption chief would, however, not confirm the exact number of governors, despite speculations that they were now up to 8 in number. Kainde Amodu reports.
The redesign of the Naira has had a huge impact on economic activities, as it has stirred up intense efforts to legally return stashed funds to the financial system. The EFCC has also embarked on sting operations to root out monies illegally kept outside the system, and has in these raids recovered huge amounts of money.
We are happy with this Naira redesign in the sense that it will give central bank an opportunity of going back to square one. By the time they collect all these monies back to their system, then they are going to control the monies that they are going to release to the system. And then, of course, once the monies are back within the financial institution, it will help to further boost, economic activities in the sense that there will be more money for people to borrow. You understand? And then we, on our own part, will have the avenue of monitoring what are we doing with all these huge resources that are out there before that are now within the financial institution.
Bawa also explained the reason why he feels the Naira redesign policy will cause the Naira to appreciate significantly, noting that it is not based on expert economic analysis.
But from what we are seeing these days, the dollar is up at 90 and then it is down 690. What happened? Is it that we have all of a sudden within 10 days carried out some, certain, miraculous economic activities to warrant, the crashing of the USD, and then we just realize that it's just about speculation. Majority of these, transactions on USDs that is happening, on the streets and among individuals are not for any economic reality. They are just using it as a means to store value.
And yes, governors are being monitored, but the EFCC boss will not be cajoled to indicate how many are on the radar.
The governors that we are monitoring, in fact, the numbers have even increased. We are monitoring everything. Nigerians are helping. Well, I don't want to give you the figures so that you will not go and speculate whether they are in the north or they are in the south.
Meanwhile, the EFCC chairman has explained the issues that led to the judgment, holding his office in contempt, noting that the case has been settled amicably.
And in June of this year, the car was released. We have started the process of releasing the funds when we got the judgment, which of course we are all surprised about, but we are able to go back to the court, and the court have seen reason to us and has has completely reversed that earlier decision.
The anti-corruption battle has progressed in leaps and bounds, with EFCC recording 3,228 convictions in court as at the 4th of November this year. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
All right, the federal government has launched its 2022 Nigeria Multidimensional Poverty Index in Abuja. The National Bureau of Statistics, which launched the product on Thursday, explained that the NPI survey was carried out against several determinants of poverty, such as age, gender, area, zones, as well as national count. Chamunda Bang has the report.
The World Bank had earlier revealed that 90 million Nigerians were living in abject poverty. However, with the current instability of the naira, high rate of insecurity, severe floods, and the continuous upward trend in inflationary pressures, it has become imperative to revisit the World Bank figures. United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator in Nigeria, Matthias Shimale, reveals the results of the survey carried out.
According to this year's MPI, 63% of people, 133 million Nigerians, are multidimensionally poor, i.e. being deprived in more than one dimension of the four measured. Multidimensional poverty is higher in rural areas, where 72% of people are poor compared to urban areas, where it's 42%.
The NPI report revealed that the national NPI is 0.257, indicating that poor people in Nigeria experience just over 1/4 of all possible deprivations. 65% of the poor live in the north, while 35% live in the south. Poverty levels across states vary significantly, with the incidence of multidimensional poverty ranging from a low of 27% in Ondo to a high of 91% in Sokoto. Despite several funding programs and alleviation schemes developed by the government, it seems that the country's SDG target of lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty by 2030 will take longer than expected.
Monetary poverty figures show that pre-COVID of Nigeria's over 200 million population, approximately 82.9 million, that is 40.1%, were income poor. However, multidimensionally, a higher 50% were identified as poor, while 51% experienced intense poverty in education, health, energy, water, access, and other living standard indicators. To ensure the sustainability of this new multi-dimensional way of addressing poverty, the MPI has been adopted as the key policy tool and measurement method, complementing income-based measurement for poverty within the medium-term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025.
This report shows that multidimensional poverty is higher in rural areas, where 72% are poor compared to 42% of people in the urban areas. So that we see that poverty as a phase of rural origin, nature, and also, as we soon see subsequently, the face of women. Globally, people that are most vulnerable to poverty are very often women and children.
According to Shimale, poverty is a nationwide problem, but its nature is different in different parts of the country. So there is a need to tailor intervention to the deprivation profile of each state. Chamun Dabeng, Trust TV News, Abuja.
The Chief of Army Staff has charged all operational theatres to review their strategies in order to defeat the country's adversaries. The review of operational activities, according to the Army Chief, would help secure lives and properties in the Northeast in particular and Nigeria in general. Bitrus Kurti has more.
Despite the relative peace enjoyed in Borno State, the Nigerian Army is not resting on its oars in guarding against security threats across the Northeast region. And to continue delivering on its constitutional mandate, the Army believes a change of operational strategies is required to sustain their onslaught on terrorists.
To have committed soldiers, the need for us to retrain and continue training, because it can never be enough. The need for us to stay focused onto our mandate, which he has given to the theater, and which is to restore peace and tranquility in the Northeast. And that's exactly what he has conveyed. It's just reminding us of the need for us to remain committed and focused in the missions ahead. To deem it wise to call the various commanders in all spheres of command, high hierarchy, middle cadre, and the low-ranking officers to come together to tweak our methodology for fighting and see how we can do fighting better and to support Nigerians and defend Nigerians, which is our ultimate goal, to make Nigeria a safer and better country to live in.
How will he enhance the warrior ethos in the Nigerian army to enhance combat effectiveness? And so this is why some of us who had cut our teeth in the past fighting in this very army and recorded great successes were called to come and share our experiences with the officers and soldiers now.
It is believed that the new strategies, which comprise techniques and military procedures, will further strengthen the security architecture. The meeting is connected with President Buhari's directive for all security agencies to deal with Nigeria's adversaries decisively.
All right, with this, we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, we'll move on to our first discussion. All right, welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak. It's time for our first discussion of the day. Now, the world population hit 8 billion mark on Tuesday, November 15th. Now, the number jumped from 7 billion in the last 11 years. Against this backdrop, experts want adequate sensitization of the citizens, increased infrastructure funding, and human capital development to cope with the population rise. Trust TV's Shafi'u Suleiman reports that the respondents also want urgent steps to mitigate the impact of the population upsurge against the backdrop of Nigeria's prediction of becoming the third most populous nation by 2050. The report.
Global population on Tuesday hits 8 billion marks, progressively growing from 1 billion in 1804 to 3 billion in 1960 and now hitting 8 billion in 2022. China is said to be maintaining its lead as the most populous nation with about 1.5 billion people, followed by India, which has 1.4 billion, and United States currently a distant third.
These projections, have been there for years. And even now, from now to 2050, is also a long time that people need to, policymakers, need to come up with things that will help us, tackle it, address it, and most importantly, to have what it takes, to take care of that population.
Nigeria's population currently stands at approximately 220 million, with a projection of 450 million by 2050. to overtake the U.S., thereby becoming the third most populous nation. How prepared is the Nigerian authorities to respond to this situation?
And that's where education is very important. Education, not just at the university level, but vocational education. People, every opportunity where people need to acquire skills, acquire knowledge that will help them solve the problems in their societies must be encouraged.
Because the truth is, corruption is really, really crippling us as a people. It is not helping us grow in any way. You would notice that things that are supposed to be used, or monies that are supposed to be used for infrastructure, is buried somewhere. It's in the hands of some individual.
With low literacy level, about 20 million out-of-school children, huge infrastructure deficit as a result of bad governance, experts say managing the population surge is imperative for a robust and developing economy.
When you have a leadership that is corrupt, a leadership that is incompetent, that will be a problem. So for us to address that, we must vote the right people into leadership positions at all levels.
If we're able to do it sustainably, we're able to industrialize sustainably. Even with the overpopulation or with the population growth, we're going to be able to curtail it, we're going to be able to control it.
As Nigerians head to the poll next year, stakeholders stress the need to frame policy debate around such critical areas to facilitate an effective leadership recruitment process. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Well, to further echo this discussion, we still have in the studio Nuruddin Abdallah, editor 21st Century Chronicles, to talk to us about this, and also a public affairs analyst and executive director, Center for Family Peace Initiative, Chinedum Ikugwe. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Thank you for having me.
I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Okay.
All right, so let's begin with Mr. Chinedum. Now, seeing that the UN has actually brought to the fore the whole talk about, the rising growth of population in the world, what does this mean? Does this mean that the world is overpopulated?
Well, actually, I'm not surprised personally with the figure being released. It's 8 billion for now. In 1975, the world population was about 3.9 billion. So from there to now, just have a minimal growth of, such a minute figure. So I can't say the world is overpopulated by now, in the sense that the indices that to do with world population has to do with the birth rate. As long as the birth rate, fertility rate is still high, population will continue to increase. So the world leaders have to do is to grow the economy to accommodate, the growth. That's just the situation, because birth control is neither here nor there. If you look at it critically, it can not be totally controlled, in the sense that the belief system of the people, religion, play a lot of role in trying to, check population growth. So, world leaders, countries individually, what to do is to really, grow the economy, providing infrastructure, like the healthcare, education, and public awareness to mitigate the surge, because it will continue to grow.
Okay. So now let me direct this at Mr. Nuruddin. Now, there's a prediction that Nigeria is going to become one of the third most populated nations by 2050, and he just spoke about birth control and family planning. Do you think this is something that we'll be able to control as a nation?
Yes, with proper policy evolution as well as implementation. In the report you just shown, the three most populous presently, China 1.5 billion, India 1.4 billion, and the United States. Minus India, the two other most populous countries are the richest countries. United States has 25 trillion GDP, the richest in the world. It has been the richest for oh God knows when. China has 19.9 trillion economy. India is among the 15 richest countries with, I think, a GDP of about 3.something trillion. That is, by the way, how much is our GDP? How rich are we? You're saying that by 2030 we'll be the third most. It seems that maybe we will reach the 1 billion mark. Is it what you guys are saying? With barely 500 billion in GDP? It will be a disaster. It will be a disaster. Apart from birth control, there are certain issues that you have to, apart from improving the economy, you have to really slow down. People must zip up.
Okay.
My cat here brought up the issue of religion and culture. China had a one-man, one-child policy. If not, they would have beat up 2 billion mark.
That would have been massive.
They have to slow down. It's a reality.
Well, how effective was that policy?
It was very, very effective in China. Even Muslim countries, they will say, okay, Nigeria is we are too religious. We go to church, we go to mosque, and what have you. But even if you look at it from the Islamic point of view, other countries do it. Let me just, the example I cite is this. You have one person who is earning less than 200 as a salary, for instance. He has 4 wives and 40 children. Which government can plan with this? Impossible. The climbs that we go, we take photos, we upload on social media and what if they do planning. 4 kids, maximum. Free education. You can't have 50 kids, or you'll be marrying and divorcing. You marry the number, they ask you the number of wives you marry, you don't even know. And you say that the government must cater for it. So we have to be realistic, irrespective of our socio-economic, religious. Indonesia is doing it. It's a Muslim country, 100% Muslim. But they have slowed down. Because they realize if you allow people to be showing their fertility prowess, then there'll be problem.
I'm sure Mr. Chinedu wants to react to that because he asked me laughing.
Actually, you made a point that actually it's difficult. You say in a democratic setting, those countries have been able to, turn up those policies with regards to birth control. Has to do with against the ethics of democracy, communist society, and the rest of them. You must be a dictator as a government to achieve that, because the way and the culture of the people must come to play. Let me give you an instance. You see, the birth control has to do with individual discipline in families. That's the key. Government cannot push it. They will do through public awareness, education, and the rest of them, but the onus still lies on the people to take action within themselves. It is an individual thing, family-wise. Now, let me put it this way. Personally, when I was to get married, I'm from a very large family, so to say, large in my own area. I'm from, Delta State, and my family, my father happened to be a polygamous person with 2 wives, 2 concubines, and 18 children.
Wow.
And then, in the course of that, nobody didn't train anybody, so to say, because of poverty, so to say. And now when I was coming on, I said, well, from my background, I don't think I will have more than 2 children. So when I sent my courtship, I called the lady, I said, look, even though for the fact that I'm still in Africa, if I'd gone to abroad, maybe I would have looked for a lady that would say, okay, just 2 of us, companionship. I said, no, but I'm in Africa, I'm going to have 2 children. Before we marry, go and think about it and come back if you agree. After sometimes you came back and say, I agreed. You sure you agreed? Deeply you agreed? It's okay. You agreed 2. The 2, if it's going to come 2 ladies, 2 girls, 2 boys, no change. If you have 2 boys now, you don't tell me I want to have my girl. It's 2. 2 is 2. Agree? Yes, agree. It's okay. So we got married, and today I have 2 children. God made it possible, 1 girl, 1 boy.
Mm-hmm.
My last child is 12. My last child is my last daughter is 11 years old. Now, my friend who got married almost the same time with me, from the east, and from Delta is from the east, across the Niger. After having about 4 children, the first pregnancy was a twin, a boy and a girl. Subsequent one, 2 girls, 4, which I felt was okay. That's the time he called me, said, I want to increase my family. I said, what's happening? He said, my father said it is not good for one boy to be in a family, that there must be 2 at least to mitigate every challenge that will come. I said, so your father owed over 70? So what are you going to take on this? He says, my father is making a point too. It's not good for one boy to be in a family. I said, really? So I asked him, do you know the brothers of Okonjo Iweala and Obi Ezekwesili? I said, no, don't follow your father. I said, no, my father made a point. I'm thinking I need to push it. Well, long and short of the story, he pushed, and the pregnancy happened to be twin.
Interesting.
A boy and a girl.
Interesting.
Now, he has 6 children. That's 8 family, a family of 8. Wow. Now, with the situation of economy in Nigeria, what happened? He just left a Nigerian to look and live in UK with his family. As I called him, he was doing a very good job. He's a senior manager in the bank. Why are you leaving? He said, I just consider the number of my children. I'll be able to cater for them educationally. So I need to take them to a society where education is provided free of charge. He left. It's not in the country now. You know? So that's what I'm saying. What I mean, culture plays a role. That's the culture issue now. Yeah. The father said, no, it's not good for only one boy to be in the family. And based on that, yeah. Now, coming to religion. It's a critical issue when we need to talk about your religion. Christian religion, maybe, they can be a little bit. Even God, even in Christian religion, did not limit the number of children you can have. He said, be fruitful and multiply. How do you multiply? Multiply. He didn't say add. He didn't say add. He didn't say add. He said multiply. Now we have to multiply. That's God's condition. So the world system is just trying to say, well, let's manage it, let's manage it. They've done so many sinister policies to checkmate birth rate.
I was actually going to ask that because, you know, I think the one that seems to reverberate is the 1 child or 2 child, 1 person policy. But what other family planning policies can actually work? Because if you look at some, index, the nations of Bulgaria, Lithuania, Latvia, and Serbia are all at least 1% smaller this year than they were last year, and this is according to UN figures. And it also says that Ukraine shrunk by considerably more, a consequence of immigration sparked by the ongoing war, right? So what we're saying is, what is it that these countries are doing differently that, you know, other populous countries can actually adopt?
I think it's a simple thing. It has to do with 2 things: education and economy. My friend, the way he mentioned his friend, the bank manager. So what the man did actually, just briefly, was to transfer his problem to the UK, where they have maximum of 4 children. So that is it. But talking about responding to what you just said, it has to do with education. We have achieved a lot in terms of health. Before marriage, now you know all manner of tests, genotype and what have you. Therefore, the fear of getting more children because you don't know who will survive has been drastically reduced by improvement in the healthcare delivery system. You can do whether you are SS, whatever now. In those days, there are no such things. All these wars, and the economy has moved from subsistence farming. Like maybe he was referring, you need to have a man that will lead other men to the farm. That is not it now with development and what if it. More importantly, the religious as well as the Christian. We are not saying that, my understanding is, we are not saying that birth control is, no. Child spacing is key. Islamically, وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ. From the birth to the breastfeeding of the one according to Quran, it's 2 years. You should not be giving birth every year. Pampers enough.
That's a lot.
You'll start all this. So even from the Islamic point of view, like you say, multiply. There is a hadith that people misuse. Say that, okay, the Holy Prophet said that we should marry so that he will be proud of us in the Day of Judgment. Forgetting the fact that كُلُّكُمْ رَائِي وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَئِيَّتِهِ. We are all shepherds and we will be held accountable for our hearts in the Day of Judgment. I don't think the Holy Prophet will be proud of talks or out of school children, street children, or robbers and other miscreants out of quality is key. You understand? So I don't know from the biblical point of view, they say multiply. Maybe you're just multiplying all manner of. So that is it. Like I said, other countries did it. And look at the economy of these people. When you do proper child spacing, the women will be healthy. Less people, less women will die during maternity, what if you? They will look fine. They will even slow down the divorce cases we do have. You marry a girl, in the next 10 years she gave birth to about 7 or 8 children, and you say you are tired of her. You send her out to her parents. That's what happens from where I come from. You understand? See, but Temumba in the house, so she's not looking fine again. They say, how can she look fine? So all these things add up. And like I said, even religiously, there are countries that we can emulate. Take Indonesia, for instance. Take Malaysia, for instance. We all move to those countries. Take Turkey, for instance. Take Iran, for instance. Iran is the biggest Muslim economy in the world. 1.7 trillion, with half of our population. But they have marks for people. You have 40 children alone. How can the state take care of education? If there is a free healthcare delivery, how can you'll be cheating others? Literally out of you. So we have to learn. And how do we do it? We have CAN, yes. Apart from talking politics, that's the major problem. All the major religious organizations, they have been politicized. They don't talk this, which is key. I remember during the 2014 conference, the Abuja convened by Jonathan, somebody, let me mention it, Senator Dan Sado from Zamfara State brought a motion, said that he wanted the committee to adopt this, a very lengthy thing that, talking about the rate of divorce in northern Nigeria. There should be alimony, he said alimony, Islamic, and what if you. So I remember I covered the event for Trust at that time, so I spoke to him. He said, but why don't you get the religious leaders? He said they are the biggest violators of this. They are the biggest culprits. Religious leaders, traditional rulers, and the politicians. And because of poverty, they can do away with all this. You see a girl married today after 2 kids thrown out of the street. Nobody knows what will happen to her. Well, I have a case. They have been married for 18 years. The man just woke up one day. He's an uncle to my friend. And he said that his auntie has been fired. I say, why? Where his uncle is no longer. And they say, after 7 kids? Is he crazy? But that is it. She has been sent to the street. That's why you're talking about poverty. The biggest, the most affected are women and their children. This is one factor that contributes to that. And they have nowhere to go. or if you go to where I come from, they will say that no matter the hardship, no matter the irresponsibility of the husband, I will stay at home, we will say in Hausa, Niba Aimini Yaji. No matter the problem, my daughter who is married somewhere or sister cannot come back home. That's why they resort to drugs. Yes, mental health. You will see a woman walking on the street without even knowing where to go. Let me give you one story. There was a funny program in one popular radio station in Kano. So a lady called, talking about all these female family issues. She was crying by the phone. What is the problem? He said that in the last 4 months, her husband, the husband has 2 wives. In the last 4 months, the husband has boycotted. He doesn't come to her room. Say, why? What did you do to him? He said that my mattress is... And he couldn't replace it. Yes, he didn't. He just abandoned her. Then after, I think about 10 minutes later, one good Samaritan called. He asked the uncle of the program, he said, how much? At that time it was about 50 or 60, so he said they should send an account of the radio station. He sent 70,000. He said, let the woman buy the mattress, maybe keep 10,000 and pillows and whatever, and let her idiot husband go back to her. That symbolizes the situation we are in. The women don't have voices because of some self and cultural thing. No matter the suffering in her husband's house, say, yeah, marriage is an act of worship, but not an abused marriage. And because, particularly where I come from, the marriage institution has been reduced to nothing. It's very cheap. So we can marry and divorce at will. And the woman will be sent to the camp of multidimensional poverty and their children. I know someone, a neighbor, he divorced his wife with 7 female kids and he sent her away.
That's quite tragic.
So you understand? So we have to look inward. Despite our religious, Indonesia is doing it. Iran is doing it. Malaysia is doing it. Turkey is doing it. Nigeria must do it. All these countries that you have mentioned, they are Christians, majority countries. So this I don't know their interpretation of this marry and multiply thing. We should adopt their interpretation.
That's the issue I'm talking about. I have told you from the beginning that it has to do with individual discipline.
Yeah.
You have to accept it. Government will give you the policy, but you will accept it to implement it. Like you said, you were talking about religious, you say you are the highest culprit of disobedience to the... Yeah. You see, sorry to put it that way, in the northern part of the country, education with regards to policies is hardly adhered to. I don't know what was written, because this issue you're talking about is more there. Issue of even early marriages. I don't know if it's religious or cultural thing, but that's the issue where we have it. When you kick against a man marrying 11 years old girl, it's a problem. You escalate it. It's my religion. You can't stop me from doing that. You know the notable politicians who did that. They're still there. Nothing happened. So those are the issue. On a lighter note, you see, that government goes Samaritan that bought that mattress shouldn't have bought the mattress to control population, because the mattress would have easily increased more population in the family. But that, by the way. Now, seriously, let's talk about this issue. You see, birth control, family planning is the only way, like you said, child spacing. All religion absorb, because another thing that is increasing population growth in Africa, mainly Africa, is this lack of fear of God. They say procreation is domicile in marriage. But now, because of the sexual revolution in society, teenage pregnancy everywhere. So I call it adding to it problem. Now, when I said it's only a dictatorial communism we equally do this thing without looking back. democratic setting, there'll be opposition. Religious body educating their followers as per the morality of the religion is out of it. Nobody is doing that. Nobody is doing that currently. Nobody is doing that. People come to get pregnant in the church and get child out of wedlock, and population is increasing by the day. So the problem is more of the people. The people have to own the public awareness communication. If you don't own it, it will not go anywhere. The people themselves must own it. One thing is for government to lead policy and communicate it, but another thing is for the people to own it. Like people we are referring to in the rural communities. Would they stop? When I mean multiply, I didn't say, just continue multiplying. Multiply based on your reasoning as an individual. When you have education, like if I have so much children, I'll suffer them, I won't be able to cater for them. You discipline yourself and not cut, a mark of how many children do I want to have. Yeah, this is what I'm trying by saying multiply is that, for instance, there's a way they control population growth in the Western world. I don't know if you have heard of Planned Parenthood. Abortion is their main agenda. Everybody has the right to abort.
Well, that's taboo here.
Yeah, everybody has the right to abort. You got pregnant, you don't want the child, abort. It was at a point legalized by even Supreme Court in America. But now, morality, right, religion-wise, it is against the ethics of religion. Because abortion is murder. So when you bring religion into it, that's why American conservative Christians are still fighting that battle till now. See? Nobody should have a right to abortion. Abortion is killing the child. Once there's concession, that's baby growing. So many sinister. In fact, there was one that an American politician suggested to the policy advisor of the president, then Ronald Reagan. Say we need to check population growth. How do we check it? Let us call all the drink and water manufacturing company in America and give them infertility drug to inject into the water and drinks.
Well, that's...
So that when they drink, it will just checkmate the fertility rate. Nobody will procreate. Because why? They cannot check sexual activities. So the way to check it now is to ensure that even though you have your sexual activities, you will not conceive. It's been done. So the world has been revolving on this problem to checkmate population growth, but it's not achievable. As long as there's sexual freedom, it cannot be achievable. The only way out is for government to brace up and grow the economy.
So
to cushion the effect of poverty.
For a country like Nigeria, some would say poverty also has a role to play in the increasing population we're seeing. Is that your thought as well? What role does poverty have to play in this?
Poverty go, side by side with education. When you are, for instance, we're talking about the rural community, level of education, poverty, people bring up children, they don't send them to school. So when people are not educated, poor people, I told you about my friend who, although high placed there with regards to his educational background and career level, said, I won't have money to give my children quality education. And as such, he moved. Now, that's poverty. To say, he didn't, for his own calculation, his money, his salary will not be able to take it out for his children. That's poverty. Poverty in rural community. When the problem in poverty there, poverty is supposed to, if you are educated, poverty will allow you to replan, to say, no, 3 children is okay for me, if you're educated, right? Poverty, I'm educated, but I don't have much money. Let me slow down on my number of family I want to raise. But if you are poor and you're not educated, you continue to multiply without knowing what is going to be the effect of your multiplication.
Okay, let me
forward. So poverty, it play a role.
Let me forward this question to Mr. Nuruddin. Now, there is an index here that says that Africa is projected to have a 38% of the world's population in the year 2100. Now, do you feel when that time arises, Africa will be able to meet up with the challenges that come with the population increase?
No, I don't think so. And out of that percentage, how many is Nigeria's? Yes, we are the most populous African country. This issue of population explosion, this projection is a factor of poverty and bad governance. Let me give you an instance. The country is about to conduct a census, right? They say February or the March. Ethnic nationalities, religious groups, just sharpening their swords. We are the most populous, we are the most populous, we are the most populous. This signifies underdevelopment because you believe you can only get the national cake because we all rely on the national cake psychologically by the large number. You understand? So that is fundamentally, that is one of the fundamental issues that we have to tackle. We rely on governments. There have been, after the last census, there have been court cases. Lagos is saying, no, they are most populous than Kano. The South is saying, no, we have been undercounted. They say that the North is on it because during the census they counted goats, cattle, and camels.
The North.
So you understand this thing. Underdevelopment. Like I said, in the past, people have many children because they don't even know who will survive because of all manner of elements at that time. But presently, there has been tremendous improvement in the healthcare. And all these killer diseases have been gradually phased out. The same thing with even, like now they say, like, particularly in the South, so you have to have a male child who is the head of the family. It's equally an underdevelopment psychology. Have a child that you can train. In fact, when you have a lady, better. Because the man, the moment he gets married, he's overwhelmed with his problems. The one that will remember you is the daughter. You understand? So, all these things they come into play. You can forgive China. And even China, they have a population explosion policy. One man, one whatever. Even though they would have been more than 2 billion by now. But they are the biggest economy. They are the second biggest economy. By 2030, they will surpass US. The 1.4 billion population is a top $19.9 trillion economy. The 300 plus you have in the US, they control 25 billion. Almost 1/4 of the 100 trillion world economy. We are barely 500 billion. So this African mentality must change. I give the example of, when you're talking about the religious angle, take Iran for instance. Iran is 1.7 billion trillion economy, with just barely 100 million population, half of what we have. Indonesia is the second richest Muslim country, is 1.3 trillion. What is the population? Saudi, with barely 25 million, they have $1 trillion economy. So which religion? This religion came from all these places. You are Africa, then you have brought your cultural nuances, your local politics, into it. It's about planning. You can't plan with population explosion. People are saying that the government cannot do this. What can government do, for heaven's sake?
But some are actually saying that the explosion might be good when it comes to workforce.
Which type of workforce? Take China, for instance. Take India, for instance. When your youth are celebrating being appointed into campaign councils or political parties as an achievement, yes, isn't that what we're doing? Check the social media. Hooray, I have made it. My name has been mentioned in the 10,000 list APC campaign council.
Okay.
5,000 list APC campaign council as an achievement. No, that's not the way to go about it. You have to have an educational population. Look at India. The 7 or 6 major tech companies are being headed by Indians. IT. But here you have reduced, as a young man of 20, 25, you are thinking like a 100-year-old man. It's our turn. No, this tribe is dominating this tribe is dominating this. While your peers in other countries are making millions of dollars using their heads. That's the way to go about this thing. We have more than 10 million out-of-school Almajiri and out-of-school children in the country. Majority of them in the north. Which workforce are you? The kidnapping industry, the insurgency industry, or armed robbery industry?
Like an industry now. Mr. Chine,
no, they worked in, like you said, population might equally help in terms of work. No, it will not. Why? There has to be the work for people to come into work. Where is infrastructure for them to employment? Zero. No industry for them to even be absorbed into the career thing there. No. They're roaming the streets. So that's why I say economy must be grown. The government must own up to the responsibility by growing the economy. By providing infrastructure, manufacturing. Those things are no more in the country now. In the 70s, early 80s, you all aware about our textile industries. Kaduna everywhere, Lagos everywhere. Where are they now? They're nowhere. Everybody just relying on south oil to share and move on. Agriculture that was known in the north, where is it? Nobody. So the government must sit up because the population must continue to grow. You see, Nigerian system is not like some of the Western, Islamic country I'm mentioning. Those people are equally enlightened, educated. When you communicate policy, the people will absorb the policy and implement. But in Nigeria, because of the level of education very low, poverty, they will not say it that way. They don't even understand the policy you are releasing to them. So that is the problem.
Okay, so
the population will continue to grow. So it's only the government that can step up to provide them, infrastructures and healthcare and elevate poverty.
Okay,
That's it.
Shortly we're running out of time, so but let's have your final take in a minute.
I think what the government is doing is simple. And when you talk about, the Planned Parenthood, I think that in Nigeria that system there's a paradigm shift. Now we have the family planning consumables, educating women and what particularly on child spacing. You don't even, there are all manner of contraceptives, pills, and all manner of things to control to control the population so that the woman will look good. The husband will not be going helter-skelter. When she gives birth every year, it's a problem. You understand? So, but I think the only problem here is that there is inadequate funding of that sector, even that subsector in the health sector. One way of doing it is to channel more funds into that aspect and bring on board religious and traditional rulers. Government can do anything. When we have good governance, we say, okay, your children cannot have this if you have all manner of this may be maximum of 4 free education, and when we achieve that, I think maybe people will see the need to zip up and.
Well, all right. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning to talk about population growth. Thank you so much. So that was Nuruddin Abdullah, editor, 21st Century Chronicles, joining us on the show. Thank you very much once again.
My pleasure. Welcome.
And we also had the Public Affairs Analyst and Executive Director, Center for Family Peace Initiative, Mr. Chinedum Ikogwe, joining us on the show also. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, with this, we've come to the end of Daybreak on Trust TV. We had an awesome time, on the show. Join us next week, Monday, same time, same station. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend.
And I'm Zainab Bala.